Hey everyone, welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. I'm your host, Ari Witten, and I have with me for the third time my good friend, Dr. Guillermo Ruiz, who is a naturopathic doctor and an expert in immunity, an expert in autoimmunity, an expert in endocrine issues, and maybe a few other things too. But he's just a wealth of information, and he's also been somebody who's worked as a researcher in a virology lab. And I shared a bit of some resources a few days ago about the coronavirus, and Guillermo reached out to me and he said, "I've got some great stuff to share on this topic. Good, accurate, quality, science-backed information that will be a great resource for your audience, and I would love to come on and share it." And I said, hell yeah, of course. I would love to have you on. I definitely want to put out good information to everyone on this topic. I think it's imperative. And, as a lead in to this, I want to say that I've been witnessing over the last few days some really weird stuff happening, especially among our friends and colleagues in the health industry of, pretty vicious fighting breaking out of, I've seen everything, a spectrum from full-blown, sort of conspiracy theories of, does this coronavirus even exist? And I don't think it's real. I think it's all made up, by the media, to, people on the other end of the spectrum going, like, we're all going to die basically. And, this is only a matter of time before this affects the whole planet and, kills massive amounts of people, and we all need to quarantine ourselves and not have any human contact for the next several weeks. And then a middle ground of people, saying this is something to be concerned about. Look at Italy, look at China, look what's going on in some of these other places, and other people saying, no, it's just fear mongering. It's all just hype. And I certainly do not claim to be an expert on this topic. I've been reading and paying attention to what's been going on, but I know that Guillermo has delved way deeper into this topic, and with his background in studying immune health and studying viruses, specifically working as a researcher in a virology lab, and specifically in relation to botanical medicines, yeah. I just knew that I had to have him on, get his take, and share this information with everybody listening. And this is really, for me, someone whose information that I trust to be accurate and reliable. And is grounded in science, and is not going to be out there on one of these two extremes that I just mentioned. So welcome back to the show, my friend.
Oh, dude, thanks for having me. I really think that we needed to put this information out for the Energy Blueprint group, one of my favorite groups on Facebook, one of the most informed groups, and let's dispel some myths. So I want to start with what is the coronavirus.
Please, yes, you're gonna. That was gonna be my question, but I'll let you ask yourself the questions and answer them. You do all the work for me.
So the coronavirus is an RNA virus. Okay, so it's and there's like discussions among scientists for many years about our virus is even alive. Because they're just these proteins that can enter your cell and hijack you. And with the RNA viruses specifically, it's not inserting the blueprint into the nucleus. It's actually inserting the orders from the blueprint. So like playing telephone, Now imagine if these blueprints are being created and read by the nucleus, the chances of mutations are super exponential. And this is the reason why this virus replicates, and there's a random mutation and it can jump hosts. Because you are creating the instructions to the instructions, and that's how it can change really fast. I love to talk about one incident around the 2000s where racehorses were dying in Australia, and they didn't know what was going on. They were having these mucosal secretions, tons of blood. And they would die. Okay, and Australia, and they were looking around, where is this virus coming from? They didn't know where it was coming from, and they found an isolated fig tree where fruit bats were eating. And fruit bats are hosts for a bunch of different viruses, viruses that are deadly to humans, like the coronavirus, and things like rabies. bats automatically downregulate their immune system to be able to play host to this type of virus. So it's hot in Australia. The horse goes to the fig tree, eats maybe, discarded figs or saliva, and it jump hosts. And then it affected this horse as an end carrier. And then two veterinarians actually died trying to save these horses, and the other one got really sick. So you can see how when you have like this petri dish where you have different types of animals, in a wet market like they did in China, you have bats and civet cats and pangolins and all the different animals. You have this perfect storm of mutations and replications where it can jump hosts.
Mm-hmm.
So
jump species.
Yeah, it can jump species, and I heard someone say that, all the animals they tested were dead, meaning that this is a biomechanical. Well, that's because that particular animal probably was an end host and not something that was an intermediate host like we are as humans. So yeah, we are not equipped to talk about traditions and culture like what they do in China. That's not our place. But the Chinese government has set up action to eliminate wet markets. So that's really good because that's one step in preventing the next outbreak.
Yeah. So there's a big question here, which I think you don't have the answer to. I think no one has the answer to, but I want to get your opinion to it anyway, which is the big question, which is what's going to happen with this virus. And, we saw H1N1, the swine flu, we've had the bird flu, we've had SARS, we've had some of these past scares, even Ebola. We've had these past scares, and then people get scared for a little bit, and then they just seem to die out. I haven't seen anything like what I'm seeing right now, where grocery store shelves are being cleared out. People are really socially distancing themselves. People are not going out. Bars and restaurants are empty. This seems to be on a much higher level than all the previous scares like this. And I've seen predictions from some experts saying this is going to affect 40 to 70% of the world's population at some point. And I've seen other experts sort of saying like, yeah, this may die out in a few months and not really affect that many people. What's your big picture take on how you see this whole thing progressing?
First of all, it's okay to not know, and whoever goes out there and say that they know, I don't know about that. We're not politicians, we're not, we can change our minds as evidence comes out. Okay. As far as how big is it going to spread or how many people are going to be affected, I don't know who said it, but over precaution might seem silly in the future. Under precaution is going to be devastating in the future. So I'd rather be overly prepared and than actually lament in the future that we didn't do enough. As far as I kind of want to and maybe this is something we can start doing. I don't know where I heard it, but let's not call it social distancing. Let's call it physical distancing, because we can call our parents on Zoom. We can we can call our friends. We can still have that social interaction that is so good, but without the physical interaction, which is really good. And I think that's going to help in the end. Ebola is kind of hard to transmit, because you need the actual saliva or the actual feces or the actual blood to splash you on an open wound or something like that. So it can be very easy to contain. It is way deadlier. But with this, reports show that some viruses can stay in flat surfaces up to 72 hours. And that's what's making this a little bit more scary. Just like, things like measles, where it can remain contagious for a while. So that's what makes this different. We can flatten the curve, and you've heard that term a lot. What does that mean? Okay. Governor Cuomo just was talking about a couple of minutes ago on a news conference, that he sees this as a wave. And if that wave crashes on the healthcare system, where ICU beds are overtaken, where the healthcare stressed to a point of breakage, we can see something really bad happening. Remember, there are still people that are waiting for lung transplants, for liver transplants. There are still people that have cancer. There are still people that are going to get into accidents. We should be reserving those ICU beds for them, even if you think that, oh, I'm healthy, and if I get this, I'm not, the chances are minimal. Well, every person that needs a respirator is taking a respirator from someone in our already stressed system. Mm-hmm. Now, without being doom and gloom, I think the people that have been on your energy blueprint program have already been preparing for this for a long time. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Meaning, people who have optimized their nutrition, their lifestyle habits, their circadian rhythm habits, their hormesis habits, people who have bolstered their body's innate immunity are likely have a much better chance of either not getting it, or if they do get it, surviving and not dying from it. To that subject, I've seen some interesting data just in the last couple of days. One of it was posted by microbiologist Kiran Krishnan, who I just connected with and interviewed recently, but I saw him post yesterday on kind of the fact. So there's a couple things. One is the fact that the vast majority of people who are dying from the coronavirus are above 50, I think above 70 years old in particular. Young people, especially kids, but people under 50, not super common for people to die from it. And so there's a lot of young people out there, 20s, 30s, who are basically saying, hey, this is not a serious risk to us. We're not going to die from it. So we can still go out and hang out at bars and clubs and restaurants and do our thing as normal. This is not a big threat to us. But Kiran Krishnan was making the point that those people who are still going out are becoming vectors for spreading it to other old people, and even if they're not dying, they're perpetuating the spread of this disease in a way that ends up killing a lot more people, the older people who are susceptible to dying from it. Do you have any thoughts on that landscape?
Additionally, not only protecting, let's say you're like in this, okay, I only care about myself, which is a very, care about me. And okay, well, the biggest comorbidities that affect your outcomes for dying from this virus are high blood pressure and high A1C. So you can be 28, 29 and have an elevated blood glucose and have elevated hypertension. And then if you get this virus, then you are putting yourself in the same category risk as those elderly people. Mm-hmm. And that's when I said, if you have taken care of your lifestyle, you have already been preparing for this. Mm-hmm. Additionally, I'll send you the link to the study about what we've learned so far about treatment. Okay, what we learned so far about treatment is that people that are older are the ones going to the ICU. Get to the ICU and they have the severe respiratory infections. They are being treated with a combination ostelmivir. They're given immunoglobulin therapy. They are being given NAC. And this is in China. This is like the little cocktail that they're giving. Over 52% of the patients that were sent into the ICU unit were given glutathione and vitamin C. There is currently a trial about IV vitamin C therapy, and we'll have those results in September and see, because they did a double-blind placebo-controlled trial on 12 milligrams of vitamin C intravenously. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that you have this insane cytokine reaction to this virus, and you basically begin to coagulate, and you die. And we saw, that was what happened with the Spanish flu. And that's why hypertension is a risk. That's why high A1C is a risk. And that's why a marker called D-dimer that predicts how fast you coagulate. Those are three of the biggest risks that people have. So once you get to a point where you are in that condition, the treatment changes, and now you're given methylprednisone, so an immune suppressant. Okay, so this is where like the information that is being put out there about botanicals is insane, because things like licorice increase your blood pressure, but they also help you maintain, cortisol levels. So, so you have this thing that is like immunomodulator, but is the risk of taking it by increasing your blood pressure worth it? I was just this weekend, I was like just looking at different feeds. I feel like Steve Kornacki on my phone and social media. And someone, said, what are you guys doing for immune support? And someone said CBD. And I'm like, wait a minute, CBD is an anti-inflammatory. And you go look at the mechanisms of action of CBD, and they reduce your immune system. So should you be taking an immunosuppressant? Taking an immunosuppressant puts you at the same risk as that 60 and 70-year-old person. So we don't know. And whoever's out there saying, take this or take this and take this, we don't know. Okay. Now, the biggest problem that I have is people that are promoting the use of antimicrobials and antivirals. Why? Because every time you're exposing yourself to low doses of these antimicrobials and antivirals, you are training viruses and bacteria on how to fight it. So unless you have an actual infection, you should not be taking colloidal silver. You should not be taking grape.
Oh, so you're saying there are people out there advising people to take antimicrobials prior to getting any infection.
Prior to getting any infection.
Okay.
And to that, I say, would you take, if you're healthy, you haven't had any symptoms or anything, would you take a prophylaxis Z-Pack? And everyone's gonna, no, but I will take colloidal silver, or I would take, so, there's this dichotomy of, it's natural, it doesn't matter, versus actually reserving those things for someone with an actual infection.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned in our previous discussion that your virology lab that you work in or have worked in has been testing botanicals for activity against coronavirus. I'm curious what they have found as far as things that maybe have some antiviral activity but are not active against coronavirus, as well as if there are any botanicals that seem to have potential beneficial activity in suppressing coronavirus.
So our lab right now, so when the Zika thing happened, okay, we have the ability to do high throughput testing of herbals. So we have a library of herbs that are traditionally being used for viruses, and we can grab a virus and test 100 different herbs. Okay, and it's a high throughput, meaning, we do one extraction method. If we see, and we take that herb, and then we do extractions from very polar with water to non-polar with hexane, because different things come out of the plant at different polarities. And then we test those things, and we find what's the best way, what's the most effective form of extraction. Every time we find a gangbusters, herb, we test it against our collection of viruses, things like rabies, coronavirus, the flu virus, pox, AIDS, Ebola, HSV, and cancer cells, to see, because, we can see those mechanisms replicated. And I was looking at one of my presentations from before 2017, and we've tested one of our best herbs against cancer and DNA viruses against corona, and it had no effect. Sarcenia purpurea had no effect. we're going through.
Which one was it? Echinacea?
No, Sarcenia purpurea.
Sarcenia.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a carnivorous plant.
Okay.
And right now we're going through high throughput testing. I don't want to say anything that has shown us some good stuff because I don't want people to freak out. Okay. But as soon as we have reproducible data, you guys are going to be the first ones to know.
Okay. So
and remember, and this is just for people that have an infection.
So there's no substances that you could speak to now that have at least displayed any early signs of potential?
Not with confidence. Okay. Now I can tell you this, we have done a lot of research with immune modulating herbs, and that can offer us some protection against, against viruses in general. Okay. You got to remember that there is a problem with co-infections too, meaning that if you get viral pneumonia, you can get bacterial pneumonia, and then that's when people end up in respirators, and that's when things get real. So having a good, robust immune system, starting with lifestyle, is very important. And then we have proven in the lab, in vitro and in vivo, that things like astragalus help raise your immune system. Funny thing about astragalus is a root, and there's a gram-negative bacteria that lives in the root. Okay. And when you take the astragalus tincture, you actually need to have a little bit of the bacteria and the medical, the medicine from the plant in order to expand your immune system. And we did experiments where we extracted the astragalus, and then we used these beads to capture the LPS, the lipopolysaccharide from the bacteria, and the medicine didn't do anything for your immune system. And then we did just LPS, and it was unregulated immune system control. But when you combine the two and you make a tincture, you can see that as a dose response, the more of the astragalus you take, the more your white blood cells become active.
So I just want to make sure I understood this correctly. So there's a bacteria on the roots of the astragalus.
Yeah.
And that bacteria is necessary to get the benefits of taking astragalus. So
correct.
Would it be fair to say that much of the astragalus supplements on the market you would not expect benefits from?
Correct. Especially if it's not root, if it's not from the root, and if it's not extracted with high ethanol.
So would an extract work, or do you need the sort of raw root powder?
No, a tincture would work.
Okay.
I think and that's the problem that we have. People are saying things like, take echinacea. Okay, are you taking the flower? Are you taking the root? Are you taking the aerial parts? Are you taking the whole plant? Are you taking a tea? Are you taking a tincture? Is it high ethanol or low ethanol? Is it the powder? So all of this, take echinacea, it's completely erroneous because we don't know. And now we do know that for the flu, taking echinacea tea actually increases the ratio of reproduction of the virus in vitro. And taking a tincture actually modulates your immune system. So we have data saying don't take an echinacea tea, and we have data saying that taking a little bit of echinacea can increase your immune system and help you fight viruses faster.
Got it. Now, there are a variety of different herbs with identified antiviral activity. Everything from curcumin to resveratrol to licorice, as you mentioned before, garlic, echinacea.
Hypericum.
What's that?
Hypericum,
lomatium.
Yeah.
Having said that, so it sounds like, first, not every herb with antiviral activity is necessarily going to have antiviral activity against a particular virus.
Correct.
Okay. And that's one thing. So the other side of this is boosting immune function. It would seem to me that given that we don't have really good data about which specific herbs have antiviral activity against this specific virus, would it be reasonable to say what substances could we take to boost overall immune function and maybe boost the system that seems to bolster the system that combats any sort of infection, regardless of what specific infection?
And I like that, bolstering the immune system, because we have to be careful. Remember, overreaction of the immune system can lead to death with this type of infections.
Yeah.
So we don't want to just chug a bottle of astragalus, but we want to keep our defenses up, because if you lower your immune defense, then you can have the trouble that it will be easier for you to fight off the infection. So now this is going back to, we're not contradicting ourselves, things like taking vitamin D daily, like low dose of vitamin D, or having your levels of vitamin D, at appropriate levels, 30 to 60, what is it, deciliters?
Nanograms per deciliter.
Nanograms per deciliter. It is going to protect you, because your immune system is going to be working better. And this is a strategy where taking a little bit of vitamin D daily through this commotion could be beneficial. We prefer to take vitamin D from the sun, okay? But for this particular situation, maybe in the short term, maybe taking a little bit of vitamin D would be indicated. Mm-hmm. There was, vitamin C, an antioxidant, prevents hormesis. Okay, but maybe right now, taking a little bit of vitamin C can help you lower the oxidative stress from having a viral infection. We're not contradicting ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's just that medicine, unfortunately, it's not black and white.
Right.
And so I don't want anyone on Facebook posting, now Ari's saying to take vitamin C. No, we have tools.
The context of an acute infection is different. And obviously vitamin C is something that we need for normal cell function. That's why it's a vitamin, is because it's a necessary nutrient for normal health. But in certain contexts, supplementing vitamin C, as you mentioned, around exercise, for example, inhibits the benefits of exercise.
Yeah.
But taking it away from exercise by several hours, especially in the context of preventing or treating an acute infection, is a really different context that I have no issues with, certainly.
And that's where, we have an immune system, and we have a Krebs cycle that needs magnesium. Mm-hmm. So taking magnesium, would be good. Making sure that your body is working optimally is the most important thing, without going to extremes and taking, 10,000 IUs of vitamin D daily, mm-hmm. because that can have consequences. Mm-hmm. And so, making sure that your zinc to copper status is great. One thing that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about would be anemia, making sure, because you need iron in order to oxidize pathogens, making sure your gut health is awesome. And then, taking in awesome, fruits and vegetables, and eating good levels of protein to help you be a badass human being, and then adding things like mushrooms, maybe decreasing your drinking, maybe being more cognizant about your sleep. Those are all very actionable things that we have been preaching for a very long time.
Right. Is it reasonable to take, mushroom extract, medicinal mushrooms, beta glucans from yeast extracts? To boost immune function, is that a reasonable strategy to help prevent
completely
respiratory infections?
Completely reasonable. One of the ways that it works is it works in the, in your digestive system as a challenge. It's the beta glucan acts almost like an LPS, like a low level LPS, and it keeps your immune system active. So it's a form of hormesis. Mm-hmm. And it's something that you can feel safe, because you don't have to go look for turkey tail in the wild. You can just grab some oats, or some bottom mushrooms. You just eat those and include them in your diet. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that's not sexy, and that's not, you can't monetize that. So a lot of people are not talking about things like that.
Yeah. What about two things? One is zinc lozenges, the zinc acetate lozenges. Do you think those would be beneficial? And then I'm also curious about your thoughts on cimetidine, which is an over-the-counter heartburn drug
H2 inhibitor, yeah.
that has been that has a bunch of research showing immune boosting benefits, and Life Extension put out an article with some recommendations where they included cimetidine as one of their recommended actions for enhancing, natural killer cell activity, enhancing immune function to help combat infections.
So with the cimetidine, we have to be thinking, because remember, the Spanish flu killed more people because people were overreacting. The immune system was overreacting, creating cytokine storms.
Mm.
So, I don't know if you've read about elderberry. People are like, oh,
Yes.
take elderberry.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
And then people are like, should we be taking elderberry? One of the naturopaths that I trust the most, Dr. Paul Anderson, he's right about this. These people that are not super experts with herbal medicine, they're probably not recommending the amounts of elderberry syrup that you need to have like the effects. We always underdose herbs whenever we prescribe. For herbs you have to take often and a lot. And people tend. So I don't think a big problem. But if you have autoimmune disease, if you have cancer, if you have, are you messing with your immune system enough to put you at a disadvantage? So we have to defer to people that, are sick, or people that actually need the treatment. So for example, if I have a patient that has the flu, I am going to do a couple of immune modulating things. I'm going to prescribe an IV, and I'm going to watch and make sure that they're getting better. And if as they get better, then we start taking all those things back. And at that point, we might be using antiviral herbs, and we might be things that are going to help you get out of the infection faster. One of the things that we found with echinacea is that if you take high doses, you're going to spike a fever faster. And that's going to shorten your cold. But you're going to feel crappier before you feel better. And you're going to get the bone pain, and you're going to get those things. Do you want to create that kind of environment every day, all day long? And I don't think so. I don't think so. Now, for the zinc lozenges, if you have an infection, it coats your mucosal glands, and it helps eliminate that viral receptacle, that you have in your your tonsils or your throat, and very good data that it lowers the duration of infection. But you have to take a lot of zinc lozenges very often, and they don't taste that good. So if you want to take, I think it's like 8 a day, and
it's like every 2 hours but no more than 3 days.
Yeah, and then they have to slow dissolve, so you have this thing that looks like you're chewing tobacco for like 20 minutes. And I've used that. I've used zinc lozenges, but I don't think
actually when I don't suck on them, when I don't really kind of like chew on them and suck on them, they last like 45 minutes.
Yeah, and they work. Mm-hmm. And they work, and they shorten cold symptoms. But I don't think we should be doing it prophylactically.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. This cytokine storm issue, to be clear, and you've mentioned this a couple times now, but it's not necessarily the illness itself that kills people in this case. In the case of coronavirus, it is this cytokine storm, the body's immune inflammatory response to it, that just gets so big, so out of control that it causes damage. I mean,
it coagulates you.
Can you explain exactly how the cytokine storm happens and what it's doing to damage or kill a person?
It basically is your body's immune response times 10. It overreacts to what's going on. It freaks out, and you have a chance of coagulating. Like imagine just your whole blood, like a domino reaction where you just completely coagulate. So this is what happened with the H1N1. This is what happened with the Spanish flu, and this is what we're seeing with this. That's why D-dimer and high blood pressure put you at a higher risk. And that's why part of the treatment is glutathione and acetylcysteine. So you can see how, like we have to be very careful, because we're talking about like having an optimum immune system before, and then having and then using methylprednisone to tamper it down.
Right. Yeah. That's so. To be clear, there's what we would want to do prophylactically to prevent an infection. There's strategies and botanicals that may be beneficial in the acute phase, the initial phase of the infection. And then there's many of those things that might be beneficial prophylactically or in the acute phase that if you get, let's say, coronavirus and it progresses to a certain degree where you now are starting to get into potential for cytokine storms, or you have a cytokine storm, then many of those things that were beneficial prophylactically or in the initial phase may actually be harmful and may amplify the cytokine storm, at least theoretically. It sounds like maybe there's not a whole lot of actual evidence to support that, but there's discussions around the ability of elderberry to do it, or colloidal silver, or honey, or echinacea, and things like that to have that effect.
Yeah.
Okay. We have this situation with coronavirus. You've mentioned that there aren't a lot of antiviral, botanicals that we're aware of that have activity against this specific virus. You've mentioned a few things in passing, like we don't want to use things that may suppress immune function, like CBD, for example, prophylactically, probably not a good idea. Definitely don't want to use antimicrobials prophylactically before you even have an infection, things like colloidal silver and things along those lines. What do you think prophylactically is kind of like, what would you say is your list of top strategies to keep your immune system strong and prevent respiratory tract infections?
So we can divide this category into, when someone is acutely this in a disease process, and then in long-term strategies, things that we can do over time to make sure, and I don't want to say, the term adaptogen keeps coming, something that is not going to upregulate or downregulate, but maintain your immune system at optimal balance. That's the most important thing. So for long term, making sure that your iron levels are good, that you go and check your iron levels, and your ferritin levels are, for females around 150, for guys a little bit higher. Making sure that, that if your ferritin is low or your iron is low, to take some iron, take some maybe desiccated liver, things that are going to boost up your iron levels, because iron is essentially necessary for your immune system to function properly. We need to have good micronutrient status. Okay. And this is all for long term, so make sure that your fat soluble vitamins are in check, A, D, E, K, and the cofactors needed, so that's where I mentioned, downloading an app like Chronometer, putting in your food, and then see what your deficiencies are. So vitamin A, we need around 1,200 IUs twice daily. E, 200 IUs twice daily. Vitamin D, 500 IUs per day, 1,000 IUs per day. K, 40 micrograms. K2 being specifically better for you, because it helps with the absorption, and you don't have to convert that K1 into K2. And then, we talked about mushrooms, and that is something that we can start doing yesterday. You can use just oats have some beta glucans, things that are going to challenge your immune system, and they're going to help you be a little bit more robust with your immune system. And then for the mushrooms, story, it really is about like hormesis. Is there a better mushroom? Probably. We don't have all the data, but just having that mushroom, those beta glucans coming in daily, that's really good for you to have a robust reaction when things go out of hand. Now, then we can move into what happens when you are sick. Then you can start talking about things that can upregulate your immune system. Remember, we have to be very careful because things like elderberry have, but they also jack up your immune system, and we don't know if that's a good thing or not yet. Okay, but elderberry,
and just to use the word jack up, sometimes that means mess up, but in this case you mean amplify, increase, like
it amplifies. Now, in a healthy person, that is a good thing. In our experiments with astragalus, it was dose dependent. The more you took, the more your white blood cells worked. Okay, and it was done with healthy individuals, and they started taking 1 drop, and it went all the way up to 120 milliliters of astragalus. And 2 things happened when you got to that dose. 1, you got a little drunk because there was a lot of alcohol. And then second thing, you actually created a fever, and you actually started having this immune reaction. Individual that can be very good because it can shorten the amount of time that infection will live in your system. Astragalus specifically, it has to be a high ethanolic extract of root. And that's something that you can make at your house. You can buy some astragalus from a reputable source. You blend it with some high ethanol alcohol, and then you let it sit for a couple of days, and then you filter it, and now you have a tincture of high ethanolic extract astragalus, and that's going to be
just a couple days. I've seen some people with tincture recipes where they're like, they'll let it sit for months and things like that. I'm like, I'm not going to go to all that effort if I have to let it sit for months.
One of my most respected herbalists said, chemistry happens at the speed of light. And that is true. All those reactions, all those things that, all those exchanges in ions and exchanges in hydrogens and atoms are going to occur pretty fast. In fact, when we test herbs, we basically make the tincture, we shake it really well, and then we start testing it the same day. And we've shown that you do reduce activity, but not in a significant way that we have to delay experiments by weeks.
I mean, it's slightly lower activity, in other words, than if you were to let it sit for weeks, but like you're 80 or 90% of the way there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is completely accurate. And that's why teas work so well. So speaking of teas, echinacea has powerful interleukin-8 activity, and it upregulates the interleukin-8 cytokine. And but we saw that the tea extract is actually increases the production of viral particles. So I would stay away from echinacea tea, and we didn't see a lot of difference between the types of echinacea, augustifolia or purpurea. But echinacea is another one that can upregulate your immune system. So if you're the type of person that maybe gets sick a lot, you catch everyone's cold, and you don't think that your immune system is there to fight it, astragalus, echinacea are things that you can definitely use to upregulate your immune system.
And then can
then
those be used on a long-term ongoing basis?
well, that's where you start talking to your practitioner, because what's the reason why your immune system is not, working optimally? Okay, and that's when you do the energy blueprint, and you will see that one of the things that we do in your program is make things work more efficiently,
Mhm.
optimize things. But chronic infections, now you're talking into dysbiosis. You're talking about nutrient deficiencies. You can talk about things like the cell danger response. All of those things are going to decrease the production of ATP, or mess up the way those mechanisms work, or at a higher level influence the downstream effects of your immune system. Okay.
Mhm.
So right now, maybe having a little bit of echinacea, just when I went to the store the other day, I went to my natural store and I picked up an echinacea and golden seal product. Can I say the name of the company?
Sure.
Gaia Herbs. Gaia Herbs makes an
You've
excellent.
done some work with them, right? With the echinacea product that you were researching that was for Gaia Herbs, or ended up like Gaia Herbs ended up using that extract that you were researching on. What exactly was that?
I trust Gaia Herbs. The way they take care from seed to product, the way that all the manufacturing methods and all of the things that they do. Whenever I'm not sure about an herb, like for example, if someone tomorrow said, I don't know, celery shoots are the best thing against coronavirus. Okay, I before I buy any other herbalist method of extraction, I would defer to Gaia Herbs. They do something really cool where they do
Wait, I have
is
a question.
uh
How much do they pay you to pitch? Every time you mention Gaia Herbs,
zero
you
money.
make like $5,000.
Zero money. Funny fact, Rick Scalzo was so impressed. Rick Scalzo is the founder of Gaia Herbs. Okay, he was so impressed with the stuff that we're doing with pennies on the dollar with our research that he made the biggest donation ever to a naturopathic medical school, and SCNM is going to have their own virology lab. And in this respect is mutual, because he has a lot of tradition in his roots when it comes to herbs, but at the same time he respects the science so much. So whenever he makes an extract, remember the studies do not exist on what's the best method of extraction. Whenever he makes an extract, he does a CO2, and Gaia Herbs does a CO2 extraction. They do an ethanolic extraction, and they do a little bit of the powder, and they combine it and concentrate it.
Mm,
So within those three methods, the medicine will come out.
right.
And that's why whenever I start with an herb, if Gaia Herbs has that herb, that's probably where I'm going to start.
Hmm.
You know,
That was a really good sales pitch. I want to go buy Gaia Herb stuff now. So
yeah, I
I mean,
know.
if they're not paying you now, they need to start. I'm going to tell them. I'm going to call
They,
Rick up and be like, Rick, you got a salesman out there working on your behalf. This guy's doing a great job. Maybe, help him out.
listen, that propolis and echinacea spray.
Hmm.
It's a propolis, echinacea, and golden seal.
Hmm.
Has kept me from getting sick so many times.
Mm.
It like everyone in the office during this past winter got sick, and it was just passing around. I just had my little propolis, echinacea, golden seal thing on my desk, and I just sprayed a couple of times. You have to with herbs, you dose high and often, and this year I've not gotten sick. I did a couple of vitamin C IVs with glutathione and zinc and lysine and things like that could have helped. But I've been using that little echinacea propolis golden seal spray for a very long time, and
Nice.
so just listening to a press conference right now in Arizona, even if you have the symptoms, even if even if you were to line up completely and say, oh, hey, okay, high probability you have the coronavirus. In some cases, if you're not at risk, they might not even test you. They might just say, okay, just stay at home, and if you continue to get worse, then go directly to the hospital. Okay, so if I was in that group, if I got sick and there is nothing I can do, they're not testing me, and they're just waiting for me to get worse, I would be taking that Gaia herb spray around the clock.
Got it.
Uh,
But is there concern of, if it has echinacea in it, kind of ramping up the cytokine response?
So, remember we're talking about elderberry, and there's a lot of people saying that it could cause a cytokine storm. The amount
I'm actually skeptical of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I feel like these substances probably end up acting as immune modulators rather than, like just immune amplifiers, non-specific immune amplifiers. But I'm curious if that's just my hunch. I'm curious if you agree with me.
I think with the levels that people would be taking out of a dropper, it would be hard to put someone at that, but that's just speculation. That, the possibility remains there.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you don't have a high A1C, if you don't have high blood pressure, and especially in a spray form, that is coating more like your mucosal membranes, I feel much safer taking something like that. At some point, we're going to do some trials with the echinacea, where we're going to be testing live subjects. And basically what we do is this: we take your blood cells, your white blood cells, and we run it to this machine, and they tell us your levels, of the white blood cells. And then we start administering the concoction, the different methods, and then we draw blood, for 2, 4, and 8 hours after, and then we see how they go up. And that's what we did with Stragalus. It's really funny that the healthier the individual, like their body habitus, the better the response they had. Be very cool, like when those trials come around, it'd be cool, to invite you over and be one of the test subjects.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love
because
that.
Listen, you will feel like crap.
I take it back. I no longer wish to be a test subject.
Yeah, you will feel, because the medicine works,
Yeah. Is there anything else in your list of strategies that you want to mention?
Yes, for acute. Okay, so zinc, you want to be taking around 15 milligrams daily, in an acute condition.
This is orally, not the zinc lozenges.
No, this is orally.
The zinc lozenges is a separate thing and is working not systemically to sort of keep the immune system strong, but is working locally in the throat and sinuses to kind of coat those areas and make it less habitable for.
Correct. Just like, you remember the Zicam swabs they used to have, kind of like that, like almost like a disinfectant. So zinc, you can go up to 45 milligrams acutely, not for more than 3 days. N-acetylcysteine, I heard you talk about it, or you wrote about it a little bit on Facebook. 500 milligrams per day. Even higher doses, like 900 milligrams, can also have the benefit of removing biofilms. And that's another place where viruses can hide and bacteria can hide. And then pneumonia, you can prevent some of the stuff that can happen in your lungs, and make it a little bit easier. It's also an expectorant, and it makes mucosal secretions easier to pass. So that's another thing. Vitamin C, again, we're not contradicting ourselves. 1.5 grams, 1,500 grams, a couple times a day, as long as you to bowel tolerance, and that can help your immune system. And then this is one that I'm like on the fence. I prefer my patients to have good levels of vitamin D. Okay, but taking like 20,000 IUs of vitamin D per day for 3 days can be effective at pushing that immune system. And
Why not do 5,000 IUs or 10,000 IUs spread out over a longer period of time?
because you want to compress it, you want to be, so different, like for example, niacin. Okay, niacin is it's a vitamin, it helps with different things. But when you bolus it, when you do like high dose of niacin and you get that niacin flush, it has some lipogenesis effects. So, after you hit a certain threshold, you can actually burn some fat and you open different pathways. And, but it changes, it's no longer like a vitamin. Same thing with like melatonin.
Yeah.
Microdosing melatonin helps with sleep. 40 milligrams of melatonin becomes an antioxidant, a very powerful antioxidant. And the sleep stuff doesn't even matter anymore. It's acting as so right. You want to compress it and kind of have that boosting effect. If you're flirting with high levels of vitamin D already, you don't want to do that often. Vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin and it can remain in your system for a long time, and can cause problems with calcification, with parathyroid issues, and other stuff like that. But acutely, you can definitely use it. And then making sure that all your micronutrients, having a diverse diet, and making sure those micronutrients are really, perfect. And then Espulardi. So the probiotic Espulardi has been shown to be really helpful with acute infections, and also prophylactically if you do have to take an antibiotic.
Is that just acute? Would that be acute gut infections or also acute respiratory tract infections?
So there was one paper on infections in general, but the problem is this: there are also papers that show that on immunocompromised patients, taking probiotics can cause problems. So if your immune system is really down-regulated, you don't want to take these novel probiotics, like SBOs, and things that really don't have a lot of data. If you land squarely in that category where you have low immune system function, I would try to stick to Bifidobacter, Lactobacillus, and even go as far as taking like single strain probiotics like Align, which is an Bifido infantis. But it's like something that we are for sure, know that is commensal to us, and not this new novel probiotic we keep discovering and using. So I would kind of stick with that type of probiotic.
Do you have anything more on your list?
I think those are like the most important things that that have science behind them, and that are safe. And that's the most important thing, that are safe. Because someone posted on social media, ozone will kill coronavirus. Well, yeah, acid will kill coronavirus. The Clorox will kill coronavirus.
Did you see the there was some clips circulating of parents picking their kids up from school, and there was a couple parents, one like spraying their entire kid down with like Lysol spray, like a home disinfectant before the kid got in the car. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
not advised, but hilarious.
It will kill the virus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will, but at what cost?
Slowly kill your son.
Yeah. So I feel that those are pretty sensible things that we can do. And, maybe you look into your cabinet and those are things that, because we are doing really good things for ourselves, maybe we stop taking, and maybe it's a good time to, just look back and do, a short period, of nutrient density, cleanup, to help ourselves in this times.
Beautiful. Beautifully said, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on the show again for the third time. Thank you for being part of the Energy Blueprint program and helping out all of our members in the private members group so much. I really appreciate you. I appreciate all the wisdom that you share. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, if somebody wants to work with you one-on-one as your patient, how can they get in touch with you?
You can reach our office, 480-657-0003. That's 480-657-0003. And I always like my Energy Blueprint patients. They are invested, and it's just a different breed. It's just a different kind of person that knows the value of health, and it's just so much easier to meet goals and to create a good plan, because they know that there's work to do, and they work with me really well.
Yeah. Awesome, brother. Thank you so much again for sharing your wisdom with my audience. It's so appreciated, especially in these crazy, chaotic times with this whole coronavirus scare. I think people are going to really appreciate being armed with a set of strategies to help protect themselves and their loved ones.
One last thing. I did put together, the top natural remedies for your medicine cabinet. I don't know if you remember that. I don't know if you ever shared that with you.
I think you mentioned it to me. I don't know if I've ever seen it.
Yeah, that was like around 4 years ago, when I've been talking about not using antimicrobials for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And we put together this resource of things that are not antimicrobial. So I'm going to make it completely available to the Energy Blueprint.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and then
we'll put a link to it on the page for this episode.
I'll put a link for my website on the episode, but I want to give it to your group. They don't have to give me their email address or anything. I'm just going to make it available to them.
Beautiful. I'll put a link to it on our website. We'll put this podcast at theenergyblueprint.com/coronavirus, all one word, coronavirus. Theenergyblueprint.com/coronavirus. So you can see all of Guillermo's info there. You can download this cheat sheet for natural medicines. Guillermo, thank you so much again, brother. Really appreciate you, and have a wonderful rest of your night.
No problem, dude. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey there, this is Ari again. One more quick thing before you go. Just make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Energy Blueprint, and also make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's iTunes or Stitcher or anything else. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview, and I will see you again next week.